Oliver Cromwell is a very controversial figure in Britain. Some view him as the man who delivered the country from the tyranny and brutality of King Charles I, the executed king who lost the Civil War. Others say Cromwell was a brute who persecuted many and executed civilians carrying out war crimes in Ireland. But in the years after his death in 1658, Cromwell's remains were dug up and they were removed from their grave and were subjected to a posthumous execution, in which his decaying corpse was taken to Tyburn, where it was hacked at by an executioner after it had been hanged in chains. His head was taken from his shoulders, and this was then placed high above Westminster Hall, where it remained 4 decades. But what is the story of the posthumous execution of Cromwell's corpse, and why did it happen? Welcome to the Fortress. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe. Oliver Cromwell was one of the biggest victors of the English Civil War, and following the execution of King Charles I, he was offered the crown, but he turned this down and then took the position of the Lord Protector of the Commonwealth of England, Scotland and Ireland. He was in a sense a head of state, but Cromwell died on the 3rd of September 1658, and he had suffered with a number of conditions, including malaria and a kidney issue. On the night of Cromwell's death, a huge storm swept across England, and many believe that this was God signalling discontent against Cromwell. But he had a huge funeral, and this was based on the funeral of King James I, the Stuart king and the father of King Charles I, his great enemy. However, Cromwell's body was actually buried earlier, as it was in such a state of decay, and weeks before the funeral took place, this happened, meaning that the coffin paraded throughout London was in fact empty. But he was buried inside of Westminster Abbey, and he had been concealed in the wall of the middle aisle of the Henry VII Lady Chapel, and he was then left alone for a number of years. Following the restoration of the monarchy, in which the executed king's son, Charles II, came onto the throne, there were searches for those men who signed the death warrant of the executed king, and with this Cromwell's remains were hunted for, and there was a call to punish Cromwell for his actions during the Civil War. With this, Cromwell was labelled a regicide, and excavators went into Westminster Abbey, and they located his body, but it took them a while to extract the body from the ground. This was because it was made more difficult because of the wood of the coffin and the cloth surrounding it. But on the 29th of January 1661, Cromwell's body was taken to the Red Lion Inn in Holborn, along with his son-in-law's, and the next day these coffins were joined by that of John Bradshaw's, the judge in the trial of the king. On the 30th of January 1661, the coffins of the 3 were cracked open, and the crowd gasped as they saw the rotting corpses and the decaying remains of Oliver Cromwell. The body of Cromwell was tied on a hurdle inside the open coffin, and this was then secured behind a horse and was dragged on a sledge through the streets of London. It was paraded for some miles, and thousands saw the macabre spectacle, but further horror would occur. Cromwell's rotting remains were taken then to Tyburn, the very place where hundreds of traitors had been hanged, drawn and quartered throughout the centuries in England. His remains were removed out of the coffin. They were then strung up in chains on the gallows. Thousands of people came to see this, and his remains were suspended high up for hours until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. The remains were then cut down, and an executioner then placed them on his table, where he hacked the head off Cromwell from his decaying corpse, and it took 8 blows of the axe to separate the head from the body. It was brutal, and his corpse was then thrown inside of the pit, and his head was then placed on a metal spike, which was then put 20 feet high above Westminster Hall. It remained here for many years, and Londoners passed under it, going about their daily business for many years, and it was a brutal example of King Charles II's power over the tyranny of those men who condemned his father to death. The head of Cromwell did go on a remarkable journey throughout the years, where it passed through a number of different hands, as it fell off the pike during a terrible storm. It even became almost a circus exhibition, and many people would own and take possession of the head of the Lord Protector. His body, it's believed, may have been rescued from the pit by his daughter, who then had it interred inside of a vault in a church. This today is still not proven. The posthumous execution of Oliver Cromwell's remains was brutal and shocking, and it showed the brutality and will of King Charles II and his feelings towards those men who put his father to death, which is understandable. When the execution took place, the decaying remains were strung up from the gallows before the executioner hacked them to pieces with his axe, and it took 8 blows to take Cromwell's head off his rotting remains. It was a shocking execution, and one which was very different for Tyburn at the time, as the men who went to the gallows that day had been dead a number of years. Thanks for watching. To support our channel, please make sure to subscribe, and once again, thank you so much for watching.